My name's Doug Clow. I'm from the Open University in the UK. This is sort of turning into an Open University Fest. And my theme here is kind of a misquote of George Santayana that those who forget the past are condemned to re-implement it without the bug fixes. We're a young field. It's all quite new and exciting. That's great. There's a lot of potential to do things, but I don't want us to drop all the great stuff that we've already built in through years of educational research and research on education and using new technologies. And I'm picking up a lot of ideas that have been around in our field for a long time, and as much as our field has existed for a long time, I'm not reinventing it. I'm just sort of making a better cycle out of it, as you'll see when we come on to that. So what I'm going to do is the structure of the talk. I'm going to start off, set out what I'm calling the learning analytics cycle. I'm going to talk a bit about the theories that I see that underpin that and that can help inform what we're doing as a learning analytics community. And I'm going to talk a bit about the implications of that view of things for making it better, for using the learning analytics cycle to improve learning. Because I think improving learning is the whole point of what we're doing. I'm hoping I'm preaching to the choir here, and you guys are all like, it's all about the learning, it's not about the rest. The definition we've got up there that goes way back to last year in Banff and slightly before that in the MOOC, that sees learning analytics as the measurement, collection, analysis and reporting of data about learners and their context for the purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. That's part of the process. That's learning analytics, but I think the idea of a cycle and of actionable intelligence and the importance of acting was right there way back in 2007 in the 5-step model that John Campbell and Diana Loblinger set out. I think the danger that we have is that learning analytics is like catnip for senior managers. The idea that you can have this dashboard that will show you everything that's going on in your institution, you'll have the grip of that. That's fantastic. And that's actually one of the really exciting things about this field, because it means we have senior management backing, which means resources, which means we can get stuff done. There's also the danger that they see that that's the actual view and it doesn't get down back to the learners and the teachers. And this is picking up a point that Hendrik said that came through in the survey there about the key value is in to the learners and teachers. So I think it's great to have the interest of senior managers, but I think we have to keep focusing on the learners. So here, without further ado, is the learning analytics cycle. This is just an iterative developed visualization of existing conceptualizations in the field, but my argument is that by changing the visualization and drawing it as an explicit cycle, it actually goes round, it comes back, that actually helps us see things differently and conceptualize it differently. And it's also, as I hope you'll see, underpinned by some relevant educational theories. There's a lot of cycles around. You can think about the technology hype cycle, and in terms of learning analytics, we're just right there in the expanding expectations, and we'll be crashing down a bit, or we'll be taking off, which is, I hope, where we'll go. So this is the learning analytics cycle. Just to talk you through it, the idea is we start with learners. We always start with learners, and the learners do something that generates data, the data exhaust coming out of what they're doing. Then we process that data in some way to generate some form of metrics, and then this is the key bit. This learners generating data and that resulting in metrics, that's learning analytics by that LAK 11 definition, but I think the important bit is to close the loop and get it back to learners via some sort of intervention. You do something as a result of seeing these metrics, and that gets back to affecting the learning that's going on. It needn't be the same learners. It could be taking a long view. You have one cohort of learners, you get some interesting metrics on those, and that means that next year, for the next cohort, you do something different. That's still closing the cycle. But where it doesn't get back to learners, that's, it might be useful for managers reporting on things, but I think we ought to be caring about the learning, and that's what I hope that this vision of learning analytics as a cycle will help us focus on, and help us to get other people to focus on. So now I'm going to move on and talk briefly about some learning theories that I see as underpinning this view of learning analytics. So I'm starting off with Kolb. Those of you from North America who are all big on Kolb's learning styles, I'm not doing anything about learning styles. If you want to talk to me about that, I'll happy to do that down the bar, but not here when I'm on camera. Thank you. most of you, well, for those of you who haven't seen Kolbs' learning cycle, this is an idea about how people learn and develop. You start with a concrete experience, something you actually do, something tangible, something real. You reflectively observe that experience. That then you move up to a level of abstract conceptualization, and that then informs some form of active experimentation, which then generates further concrete experience. And this is iterative development. You see things as spirals. And I think the parallels, hopefully, are obvious to the learning analytics cycle as I drew it, not accidentally. You have the concrete experience, the reflective observation, the abstract conceptualization. We're moving from the concrete, the data coming out from the learners, up to an abstraction, a metric, and then that's connected back through in a feedback loop. It's also, you can see learning analytics supporting individual processes through here that, you can see if there are learner-facing learner analytics, that can help this process of reflective observation and abstract conceptualization. That's part of where that, I think, the strength of learning analytics is. So that's skating over the whole of Kolbs' learning cycle. I'm skating now quickly on to Donald Schoen's idea of the reflective practitioner. He's done a lot of work on what it means to be a professional and a professional learner, and the importance of reflection in action when you're doing something, reflection on action, considering later. And he talks a lot about the iteration between espoused theories. Those are the things that you're thinking, that's the conceptualization, it's the abstract level, and theories in use, where you're actually doing things, and that interplay, that cycle, as you can see, things between those. And he's also very keen on talking about learning systems and learning organizations, and there's a lot in there. It's old stuff, but it's still good, that I think can inform what we want to be doing systematically with learning analytics. And this idea of a cycle of reflection being key to professional practice has been taken up across a lot of professional fields, from architects, anthropologists, right through to zoologists or xenobiologists. And another useful idea, I think, for us out of Schoen's work and some others is this idea of single loop and double loop learning. The example they take for a single loop learning is a thermostat, that you set the thermostat to a certain level. Single loop learning is that thermostat turns the heat up if it's too cold, turns it down if it's too hot. That's right. And that leads the system to optimize on that value. But double loop learning is when you're setting what that thermostat is at. And that's actually the importance of optimizing for the right goals. The system isn't effectively learning if it's optimizing to the wrong temperature. If you've set it to if you change that setting to make it the right temperature, that's a different level of learning. I think we need to focus on that. Another theory that's widely used, or was very widely used through the 90s and is still around, is Daniel Laurillard's Conversational Framework, for particularly for discussing learning using new technologies. And here it's a conversation between a teacher and a student that happens at two levels. It happens at the level of theory and ideas and abstractions, but also at a lower level of concrete action and experience. And I think, again, here, without giving you a full-on introduction to this, again, I'll do that down the bar if you want. There's, I think, learning analytics. You can see here there's a learning analytics can facilitate the conversation, particularly at the level of actions, where the teacher's setting something up, the student's doing something, that's generating feedback from the teacher. That's making it very powerful. It can also help you move up the level of abstraction if you've thought of the right sort of metrics that enable that. There's also another level at which you can see learning analytics using Daniel Laurillard's frameworks. What I've taken here is sort of got a whole load of teachers stacked up on top of each other and students stacked up on top of each other. And the idea with learning analytics, you've got you're facilitating a conversation at multiple levels between teachers and students at the level of abstractions and ideas. So the teachers' conceptions up level, talking to students at lots and lots of levels. It all gets interesting. But I'm going to stop getting so carried away with intellectual abstractions and come right back down to engineering, which is where a lot of it gets quite practical and clear, and right and wrong answers and stuff. And there's a lot in there about control theory that's really quite old, that actually is really quite useful, I think, for learning analytics practice, and actually informs some of the stuff I was talking about earlier about Kolb and Schoen's idea is about double loop learning. So this is a model of a closed loop control system, And the idea here is that it's for a closed loop control system, it's the feedback from the output to the input that's crucially important. So you have a system, so taking the thermostat example, that's the whole house. You've got a controller that controls the input to that, so that's whether the furnace or the boiler is turned off or on or not, and that leads to the system output, how warm the system is. To get a closed loop system, you have to connect the feedback. You must get the feedback from the output and compare that to what the reference value, what it wants it to be, check whether that's right or not, and adjust appropriately. And so you can see learning analytics here, closing that loop, comparing what's coming out to the reference value, what you want it to be, is the closed loop control system, and pulling back the double loop learning idea. A key question is, what should that reference metric be? What value is right for that? And also at the level above that, what sort of metrics should we be optimizing? I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So there's a lot of really useful stuff in control theory that I don't have time to talk about how you can improve the performance of those systems, but abstracting from it very widely, the 3 ways you can get better feedback is to get feedback faster, to get larger amounts of feedback, or to get better quality feedback. And I've sort of classified the stakeholders in learning analytics systems into 4 broad things. You've got the learner, who's very close to the learning. They know what's going on, so they're close, they're nearer to us on this 3D graph. And they can get a faster response if they get something from they get a signal that lights up red. They can do something about it quickly. The teacher has a larger scale. They talk to a lot of students, but it takes them a little bit longer to deal with things, but they're still quite close to learning. The manager, the head of department, or dean or whatever, they're a little bit step back, but they can affect a whole institution. And then right at the top, at the back there, for the really large-scale response, you want the policymakers, your local, regional, national governments, your funders, those sort of people. Their responses tend to be a lot slower, but larger scale, and they're further away from the feedback. So my argument is that using learning analytics, that you can improve the quality and the speed of the output by wiring getting the feedback and the learning analytics, the metrics, through to the learners and the teachers who are close to it, and you can get the scale across learners and teachers. You can get it to lots and lots of learners and teachers, and that gives you the scale as well. And I have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to skate over a discussion about openness and about how that might work. And I'm going to, a lot of people are potentially hostile or scared by learning analytics, and the openness can help with that. And I think we need to focus on optimizing the right thing. It's this double learning thing. Don't optimize money unless that's what you want to optimize, because you'll lose the learning. Don't optimize proxies for learning unless you want to optimize the proxy for learning. If you want to optimize the learning, optimize that. So make sure that's what your metrics are focusing on. And assessment, I think, is absolutely crucial here, and we should be like students and just totally focus on the assessment. By making sure that the assessment actually assesses what we want them to be learning, because if we're optimizing for the assessment through all of our models and metrics, they're going to be even more focused on the assessment than they were before. So we've got to make sure, even more than ever before, that that assessment actually drives them to learn what we want them to be learning. And a final quick plea around there is that we generally consider assessment as an output variable in all of our models. All of this builds up to assessment as the output. It can also be an input variable, and you can get some really interesting things there that I don't have time to talk about. So to sum up, I am coming towards the end. The learning analytics cycle, I hope I've convinced you that this underpins what we're doing with theory. The importance is to close that loop, get the feedback back to learners, the importance of optimizing the right thing, and then once you're optimizing for the right thing, then you go for more, faster, better feedback, particularly by targeting learners and teachers, and not just the managers and policymakers, although those guys are helpful for money. And we should pursue openness and ethics as those are where we want to be getting to. We won't get there immediately, but I think as the journey is well worth it. And that is the end of my talk. The slides are up on SlideShare if you want to see them. Thank you very much. I could have talked for another 5 minutes. I'm a
big fan of the single and double loop learning concept. I was having lunch yesterday with a local guy, Jim Sibley. He works in team-based learning. It's a fairly well-documented, very successful approach to curriculum. He used to work in a kind of precursor. This is actually a question. Actually, I'm not
it's
even
interesting.
sure it's a question, but he used to work in what we would call precursors to learning analytics. Now, I said to him, I was going to this conference, and I said to him, okay, team-based learning, good curriculum approach, has fantastic record. How could learning analytics intersect with what you're doing? And he said, well, I don't really see how it could help at all. And that made me think, I get worried that we'll build these terrific models, but they're not going to help the people who need to use them. Or that people who are doing fantastic things in curriculum aren't going to be able to draw on the learning analytics frameworks we're developing. It's almost like we're starting with the tools and hoping that people come to us, and this is where the double loop learning comes in, because it's really a design question, and the question is, who makes the designs? Should it be technicians, or should it be people who are designing curriculum? And if I'm going to put a question on that, I'll say, what do you think?
Well, thank you for that question. I mean, I think these are really important questions, and the questions about what are we serving, and are we just turning up with a bucket full of tools and looking with a bucket full of hammers and saying, what can we hit with these hammers? We're going to end up smashing up some stuff that actually perhaps isn't best supported with a hammer. Some things are and some things aren't. I think where you've got really interesting and valuable learning experiences going on, I think we need to be looking at how, as a community, as a learning analytics community, if that's what we're becoming, at how we can, are there ways we can spot that? If there aren't, then, fine, there isn't a problem. If there are ways, and one of the things that came out for me yesterday is the great power of very, very simple interventions that don't need a lot of modelling, or that have very clever modelling that then come out with a very simple metric and view of it at the end. So if you've got a team-based learning activity, just pulling an idea off my head without talking to the people involved, which I'd want to do first, and having that conversation is the important thing we should be doing. But if you have something like that and it's happening online, you could get little alerts to say, okay, this team is supposed to be forming and working, but these two people haven't logged in yet. That may or may not be a problem, but that, that's a trivially simple piece of learning analytics. It might be really valuable for picking up early problems with team forming and group forming and things like that can alert the right people that things aren't working. So I think there are ways we should talk to people who are teaching in exciting ways and focus on ways that we can support those and where we can get the best value, because we're in early stages of discipline. We're still finding low-hanging fruit, great benefits from quite simple interventions. And I think we need to be very careful about what metrics we use, and we don't use everything as a hammer. I'll stop. I could carry on, but I should stop.
Other questions? I'll ask one about control theory then.
Okay.
So if you have one measure that you're optimizing for, like scores for No Child Left Behind testing, features of the system emerge that are unpleasant.
Yeah. Yes.
So what do you do about it?
Well, what you need, there's two ways of doing that. One, you resist the metric and you say we're not going to optimize for a single metric because that's a mistake. That's not what we care about. Actually, we care about something more than that. The other solution is to get, if you are making a system that optimizes to a single metric, make sure the stuff you care gets into that metric. Now, with No Child Left Behind, getting into fiddle with those metrics is, that's right up at the policy making level and hinges on elections and stuff like that. But I think where there is a metric that's inappropriate, that isn't capturing all of the stuff that we think is valuable, we need to say that's not capturing all that's valuable and find ways of articulating that value. Not all of that value can be quantified and put in a metric, and that's really important to hold on to. But where it can be, we should.
Okay. Let's thank Doug again.